Who am I speaking with?
David Berlin, Chief Content Officer with TechWeb, and TechWeb is the producer of Interop.
Well, hey, thanks for the show, and you are also handling the live stream and doing a lot of interviews on the floor. So you've talked to a lot of people and seen a lot of stuff here. So I want to know, what do you think are probably the top 3 or 5 highlights so far from the show?
Well, thanks, David. I think there's so much going on here, and there's a lot of innovation going on, of course, around cloud. So cloud is has a huge presence here on the show floor and in the conference rooms, where a lot of instructional content's taking place. You've got what you see right now, I think, is a lot of the hardware vendors who are making all sorts of switching gear, that kind of stuff. They're starting to catch up to the demand and the interest in what is called the private cloud. So if you're going to run one of these clouds on your own, and cloud having all the interesting stuff like virtualization as a part of it, the idea of being able to really very quickly allocate on-demand resources to some new demand that's happening, somewhere in the organization, a spike on your e-commerce or something like that. The hardware vendors are trying to catch up and saying, okay, we don't just have to provide this hardware to the cloud providers. We now have to provide it at enterprise level to the people who are trying to run their own private clouds, who don't want to go out into the public cloud yet. So you see a lot of that.
So what do you think, because I know you also run a cloud conference as well, what do you think the cloud story is different now at this year's Interop versus last year's?
Well, the cloud story is just moving incredibly fast. And I think the reason is because there's so much innovation in the space. In the early days you had software as a service, a few providers doing that. You had some infrastructure as a service providers doing that. It was all very public cloud based. Now you've got the platforms as a service, and that is really taking off. We have this event here, and you've got Google I/O taking place, an hour and a half away by plane, and they're announcing Google App, new things for Google App Engine, which is platform as a service. So you've got Microsoft here at Interop talking about Azure as platform as a service. So you've got all these platforms that are coming out where people can start to more dynamically deploy cloud into some platform that's already ready to take it in the cloud, as opposed to provisioning your own Java infrastructure, for example. So that whole idea of platform service is moving very quickly. And of course, you need this incredible infrastructure to support it, and then also, how do you give all of your users the same kind of access to it that we always had to give users access to infrastructure in the past, and all the security and permissions and access control that went with that. So
it's not any easier. It's more complicated. Let me ask you a question. Is there any story that's big that isn't the cloud?
What's Interop about? It's about interoperation. It's about everything's connected. So there's nothing here that isn't somehow connected to everything else that's here. If you want to talk about fiber channel over Ethernet, FCOE, it's all about running a private cloud. If you want to talk about 100 gigabit Ethernet, if you want to talk about all these switching fabrics that they have here, you want to talk about provisioning or virtualization or cloud, it's all interconnected because it's Interop. And Interop is about connecting all this stuff up and making it work cheaply.